Hey everybody, it's PartyElite, here with a second video about the Steam Summer Sale. There are just so many great deals on right now that I had to split it into two videos, and I'll link my first set of 10 recommendations in the pinned comment below. Today's video focuses on some of the best games you can get under or just around 10 bucks, and as usual with the channel, we'll be looking at primarily strategy, tactics, sim, and management type games. Leave your own suggestions and thoughts in the comments down below, hit the like button if you like the video, and don't hesitate to subscribe if you like these kinds of games and would like to see more. Now, with timestamps down below and no more time to waste, let's begin. At 75% off right now, Battletech is an absolute steal. Based on the tabletop wargaming system of the same name, it boasts a solid narrative campaign as well as a great sandbox mode where you take control of your group of mech pilot mercenaries and involve yourself in a massive war amongst the stars. You balance your choice of mission difficulty levels against the factions you're doing them for as you try to improve your relations with said factions accordingly, going from planet to planet, taking travel time into account, and considering the biome in which you're fighting as it impacts your mech's efficiency and ability to fight heat generation, as well as your overall strategy. You spend time acquiring and training more pilots, improving your ship, and acquiring and improving your mechs, each of whom have their own strengths and weaknesses, classes, and capabilities. Managing different strategies of how to use heavy and light mechs or figuring out how much of a risk you can take with heat levels is always a fun time, and when you're done exploring all there is to see in the base game, there are a few non-essential DLCs you can get to add some more mechs into the mix, or you can check out some of the excellent mods out there that completely change some of the core mechanics or introduce many new parts and mechs too, all from the Battletech universe. From balancing a budget to keep all your pilots paid, to managing their morale and performance on the battlefield, Battletech has a lot on offer, and I still hope to see it get a sequel one day. Do not miss out on this great price on this great gem. At 80% off right now, you can get Ancestors Legacy for just about 8 bucks, and it is well worth the price tag. An interesting squad-based historical RTS, Ancestors Legacy has multiple narrative campaigns through different historical periods, as well as a skirmish mode versus the AI, and a multiplayer mode that after so many years isn't really relevant anymore unless you have some friends to play with. With that said, the single-player gameplay is a good time as it blends an almost Company of Heroes style resource acquisition and management with minimal base building and some great tactical decision-making during battles, all thrown against a few different historical backdrops that'll give you the opportunity to explore multiple cultures and their buildings and units and fighting styles. Things like flanking, hiding in tall grass, setting up traps, and baiting the enemy all have extra value as there are actual tangible effects, and you're keeping an eye out for the day-night cycle and shifts in weather too, as they all impact visibility, sight ranges, and how easily buildings are able to catch on fire when you go raiding and pillaging. Defending your resource generation nodes takes on a new dimension as well, as they're represented as little villages, and seeing your units upgrade over time, march from place to place, and participate in some ruthless combat really never gets old. There is some good DLC out there too, introducing new factions and narratives, but the base game is a great start and at an excellent price right now. Warhammer 40k Mechanicus is 80% off, around 6 bucks right now, and it's another great turn-based tactics game set in the Warhammer 40k universe. They are few and far between, but Mechanicus had some great ideas that put a unique twist on the genre, and you can tell the developers were super passionate about the source material and end product. You play as the Adeptus Mechanicus, a faction in the grimdark future that typically ends up as more machine than man, and they come across a Necron tomb world that they investigate. As they do so, the buried undead machine bodies of this ancient Necron empire begin to awaken, and every move you make, every breath you take, they're watching you, growing more powerful and more dangerous. As you tackle multiple missions, you'll do some dungeon crawling to investigate these mechanical monstrosities, coming across various events and decision-making opportunities that might help or hinder. And of course, you'll dive into turn-based tactical battles that put your selected mission party against whatever machinations dwell in these tombs. Mechanicus does away with hit chances when it comes to these battles. If you can position yourself appropriately and do the math on your damage output versus the enemies you're up against, you should be good to go. Any loss is the result of actions that you've taken rather than some random dice rolls, and this feels particularly fitting for the faction you're in charge of. Naturally, you'll have some upgrading and researching to do on the strategic side of things, and you'll have a variety of troop types at your disposal, pit against a variety on the other side of the battlefield too, showing some of the really fun and unique ideas behind both of these factions in their original source material. Just brilliant stuff all around, and beyond worth the price tag. Kerbal Space Program is just $10 right now, 75% off, and it is just copious amounts of fun for anybody who ever loved space exploration. Not in the sci-fi sense, discovering new solar systems or your Star Treks and Star Warses, but the more grounded exploration that we've actually done and continue to do within our solar system. Yes, it's got a cartoony aesthetic, and yes, it doesn't take itself too seriously when it comes to the visuals, but Kerbal Space Program takes itself very seriously when it comes to the physics of building your own ships, launching them into space, achieving orbit around your homeworld, its moons, or the many planets in the system, or doing whatever else pleases you. KSP is the source of endless experimentation, especially with all the wild mods out there adding more parts to play with, more mission types to take on during a career or sandbox playthrough, or just visual upgrades if nothing else. There's nothing quite like the challenge of setting up satellite relays so you can maintain control of rockets that are under the control of probes, and there's even less like running out of fuel mid-mission and needing to send a rescue team to solve the issue. Calculating trajectories and learning orbital physics has never been so fun, and with Kerbal Space Program 2 now being delayed until sometime next year, I'd say there's plenty of time to have plenty of fun with the first game and see if it's your jam. XCOM 2 is currently 85% off, just about $10, though I'd also recommend picking up the DLC for this amazing, dare I say, classic. Now, how does one describe XCOM 2? I mean, normally, turn-based tactical games are just said to be like XCOM, but here we are actually looking at a timeless sequel that is as worth the full price today as it was back in 2016 when it launched, so it's a steal on sale. Great graphics, punishing gameplay, and a great blend of strategic and tactical layers, XCOM 2 remains a bit of a gold standard for the genre in my books, and since we now know for a fact that the upcoming Marvel's Midnight Suns by the same team plays nothing at all like XCOM, you're pretty safe picking this up if you haven't already, and not feeling like you got an older version of something new that's releasing soon. Managing equipment, keeping an eye on your operatives and their interpersonal relationships, researching tech, and trying to overcome seemingly insurmountable odds are all par for the course, and with inventive enemies, procedurally generated maps, and a compelling narrative, XCOM 2 really did hit all the right notes, and it continues to do so. 2 Point Hospital is 75% off, also around $10, and though it has a bunch of DLC, I think the base game gives you lots of mileage to begin with. A quirky tycoon management style game, if you've ever played Theme Hospital by Bullfrog Games back in the day, this is pretty much the spiritual successor. You're put in charge of managing hospitals across a variety of settings, and that involves, hiring and managing staff for all sorts of positions, building the actual hospital itself and sorting out its maintenance and capabilities, buying equipment to deal with ailing patients as they come through, and researching upgrades and solutions to all manner of illnesses. If the visuals haven't given it away yet, you're not dealing with real-world diseases or conditions, and in that humor lies plenty of the charm in 2 Point Hospital, but naturally, beneath all that charm and comedy, lies a decently challenging management game, especially as you get further along and have to manage more and more elements to achieve your objectives. 2 Point Campus is releasing later this year, but playing 2 Point Hospital will give a taste of things to come, I think, and it's just a completely different theme from the upcoming university-focused title, so even with the upcoming release from the same team, I think it's not too late to dive into and have some great fun with 2 Point Hospital. Iron Harvest is currently 67% off, again, $10, and it remains one of the more compelling Company of Heroes style games set in the diesel punk world of 1920+. You might recognize it from the board game Scythe, if not from the concept artist's own original pieces. If you're a fan of the Company of Heroes style of strategy game, I think there's plenty to enjoy here between the campaign, the challenge missions, and of course, the multiplayer if you have folks to play with. You'll be doing some light base building, recruiting units, claiming weapons on the field, and capturing resource generation points, and while you're doing all this, you'll have the pleasure of fielding some absolutely stunning-looking mechs alongside more believable as well as fantastical infantry units. The environmental destruction is always a joy, and as you might imagine, there's a bit of a rock-paper-scissors type deal going on between the units. And for just $10, there is plenty of fun packed in Iron Harvest, well worth exploring. The newly added World Map mode just came through a few weeks ago, and it adds a new dimension to a non-narrative single-player campaign where you manage resources, order armies around, and play the game at a grander scale than ever before. Just added reason to pick the game up now if you haven't already. Darkest Dungeon is less than $5, 85% off, and it's been a recommendation I've often made for the Steam sale. Now, if you had any hesitation picking this game up these last couple of years because the sequel is coming soon, you can set those hesitations aside, since the sequel pretty much plays nothing at all like this first game. So in a bit of a glass-half-full approach, you get to have a completely different experience here compared to the sequel, and there's still a very good reason to grab the first Darkest Dungeon. There's DLC you can pick up too, but the base game is filled to the brim with stuff to do and explore, and mods help add plenty of additional elements to explore as well. Darkest Dungeon has you looking to reclaim your ancestral home and lands from some deep corruption, and using the nearby town and its many structures as a headquarters where you can train, equip, rest, or otherwise prepare your parties of adventurers, you try to fight back this evil, one dungeon crawl at a time. You go from room to room, worrying about the mental strain and anguish your party members face as they fight off all manner of horrific beasts, and while you try to arrange yourself in the best possible ways to take advantage of every class's unique abilities and specializations, you'll find yourself constantly pushed and pulled around, facing death, or perhaps worse. Darkest Dungeon is super punishing and agonizingly tense at times, all reasons why I enjoyed my time with it so very much. If you've never played Darkest Dungeon, I can highly recommend checking it out. It's worth well over the $5 it's on sale for right now. WARSAW is just under $10, 66% off, and it's one of the many Darkest Dungeon-inspired games in recent years that really stands out with its own charm and identity. It has a similar dark and gritty art style to go with similar battle mechanics, managing a party of partisans fighting off Nazi occupation in the titular Warsaw. You'll be upgrading your party members, finding synergies between their abilities, and going up against all manner of enemies from grunts to flamethrowers to war dogs and more. Now that's where the similarities end though, as Warsaw has you managing the morale of your resistance movement across districts, asking you to move from place to place in the hopes of, well, keeping hopes up, and with a goal to acquire resources to keep fighting the good fight. Events take place from time to time that come with decision-making opportunities and consequences, and when you actually go out on a mission, you spend time traveling in a somewhat more free-form fashion, hiding from threats or engaging them head-on based on your circumstances, interacting with civilians and non-combat encounters, or perhaps seeking out loot for future use. The game does a lot of familiar things, but it's also not afraid to switch it up and have its own identity, like I said. Warsaw has probably been one of my favorites Darkest Dungeon-like games, and I think it's well worth the price tag here. Lemnis Gate is currently 60% off, just under $10, and it's definitely one of the more underrated games on this list, and probably one of the riskier purchases if I'm being completely frank. I think Lemnis Gate is a great little gem, a first-person shooter strategy blend that works really well as it pits two teams against each other, going toe-to-toe, round after round in some great time-bending action. Playable in 1v1 or 2v2 objective-based modes, each side picks a handful of operatives, each with their own special abilities, pros and cons, and then over the course of multiple rounds, you play the same 20 or so second loop over and over again, using one operative at a time, layering on the actions of a future turn onto previous turns. So, for example, the first turn from the first team is played on a completely empty map, doing whatever they please, while the first turn from the second team is played on the same map, with the other team's first turn playing out at the same time. While old turns cannot adapt to future turns, they can try and predict what their opponent will try and do, and set up turrets, toss grenades down important avenues, etc., and then subsequent turns can provide support, respond to opponent actions, or do their own thing. I have a whole video about Lemnis Gate explaining it further, but it is a fascinating concept, and it is a real joy to play. Now, the reason I call it a riskier purchase is because it's a purely multiplayer game, and since it never really hit critical mass, it's harder to find games these days. If you have a buddy or two to play with, though, I can highly recommend grabbing it as a pair. Again, it's just 1v1s and 2v2s, and both approaches are equally fun, so it's not too hard to find folks to play with, but I'd be remiss not to mention that potential snag while recommending a multiplayer-focused game, as much as I enjoyed my time with it. Lemnis Gate deserves more love and attention, and for just $10, it is well worth the price. Now that's my 10 for less than 10 video for the Steam Summer Sale. I hope you find something in here that you like, and if you have thoughts or recommendations of your own, again, leave them in the comments down below, and don't forget to hit that like button on your way out. If you're looking for more recommendations, don't hesitate to check out the video I've got linked in the pinned comment and on screen right now, and for more content about the kinds of games you've seen here, don't forget to subscribe. As always, a massive thanks goes out to all of the channel members and patrons who've been supporting the channel on a monthly basis. Y'all keep us alive and running smoothly, and of course, a big ol' thanks goes out to each and every one of you for watching. Until next time, cheers.